Hello everybody, Paul Sheriff here with Pluralsight. This module is utilizing JavaScript exception handling. The goals for this module are to learn how to handle exceptions using the try-catch statements and the finally statement. We'll also talk about how to throw your own custom exception and how to determine the type of error that has just been thrown. Let's get started. Your basic design pattern for when running code that could fail is to wrap it inside of a try-catch block. So we put the code that could possibly fail inside of the try. Then, if something does fail, it jumps down to the code within the catch block. So an error object is created and it's passed to the catch block. Now the finally is code that runs every single time. This is optional. You may not need a finally block every single time. Let's take a look at a demo of a simple try-catch block and also add on a finally block. In this function, simple try-catch, we declare a variable called result. We're then going to do in a try block, result equals x divided by 10. Now this code will actually error. JavaScript creates an error object with a name and a message property and passes that to the catch block. Now you can do whatever you want to do within the catch block. I'm going to simply output the message to the console. Let's go ahead and run this, and we'll take a look at how this works. So there you can see the error message that JavaScript created for us. X is not defined. Now what you decide to do with that error is completely up to you. Some people might publish this back to a server. You may even log it locally if you want to, although you really need to get it back to a server at some point. That's completely up to you. But let's take a look at the finally. So here's another function called finally catch sample. We're going to do basically the same code. We're going to let result. In the try block, we're going to do result equals x divided by 10. Now I'm adding some additional console.log messages in here just to show you what will happen. So when an error occurs on line 40, line 41 or any other lines after the line where the error occurred will never run. We then dive into the catch block. That code runs, and then if you have a finally, that code will always run even if it goes through the try block normally or if it goes through the catch block. Let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, an error will occur. We then go into the catch block. I also spit out that error message again. And then we're in the finally block. So when an error occurs, we go into the finally. However, if it succeeds, so now let's go ahead and declare x. So x is now defined. And now we'll see that we will also go into the finally block even on success. So we'll go ahead and run this. And now you can see an error won't occur. That was the console.log statement. But no catch block because everything went successfully, but the finally block still runs as normal. While JavaScript gives us an error object, a lot of times the messages are just a little bit too cryptic and maybe don't explain enough about where you are in your code to help you track down the error. If that's the case, you can throw your own custom error object. And you might want to do this quite a bit. What you do is create an object with at least two properties, message and name. Then you can fill in the name with whatever you want and the message with whatever you want. And the message could even be like what file you're in, what function you're in, what object you're in, and include other properties of the object even that you happen to be in. There's all sorts of things you can do with this custom error object. So let's take a look at throwing your own custom error object. It's a simple one, but we'll give you the idea of how to at least start this process. I have a function called throw error. In this, I try to call the attempt division, and I do that in a try-catch block. If we take a look at attempt division, it's basically the same function we saw before. We let result, we try result equals x divided by 10, But inside of the catch block now, once we catch that error, instead of just grabbing the original error message, I'm going to throw my own custom message, because this way I'll be able to add on some additional information. So look at the throw, this object, where I've got a message and a name property. Now, in the message, we say, in the attempt division method, the following error occurred. And I still grab the original message. That's always good to have. But I've added on some additional information here to make it a little clearer about where I was when the error occurred. As far as the name, you can give it any name you want, but I would try to give it something that maybe is a little unique. I just use custom error here, but maybe you want to do custom attempt division error, or something like that, something unique and something different than the JavaScript errors, which I'll show you in just a minute. But let's go ahead and run this. So let's throw our custom error, and there you see the error gets bubbled back up. We then display that error message, and I added on also the error type. So let's go ahead and go back here, and we can see right here, after I've displayed the error message that came back, I then display the error type, which is the error.name property. Now we saw reporting the error type by using the error.name. Well, let's take a look at the built-in errors that get thrown by JavaScript. There is a reference error, a range error, a type error, a URI error, a syntax error, an eval error. Now, eval error is for backwards compatibility only. It's not used anymore, but you may still see it in some older code. Let's take a look at determining the error type. In my sample here, I've created a function called HANDLERROR, to which I'm going to pass the error object generated by JavaScript. And then on line 73, I'm going to switch on that error.name property, because JavaScript is consistent and will always pass me the same error name for each of its built-in error objects. So you can see we have a case for reference error, for range error, for type error, for URI error, for syntax error, and for eval error. Now, if you have your own custom types, that would then fall into the default, or you could add additional case statements here as needed. Let's then go all the way back up here to the top, and we can take a look. So a reference error is what I showed you before. The reference error is when you have a variable that is not defined. A range error is because you did something that caused an error in a numeric value. So in this case, I'm trying to do a toPrecision, which is a built-in JavaScript function that tries to give you 200 significant digits. Well, that's not possible according to JavaScript, so a range error occurs. Type error happens because the result is a numeric, and we're trying to apply a toUpperCase to a numeric value. Again, that doesn't work. That's only for strings. URI error happens when somebody gives you maybe a URL and it has some invalid characters in it, and you try to maybe decode that URI, it will throw an error to you. Syntax error, this is the one that's usually used now instead of eval error. So if you're using the eval function, and in this case I forgot the missing single quote on the end of hello there, so when you're trying to do an eval and you get an error, you're going to get a syntax error. And then as you can see in each one of these catch blocks, I simply call the handle error. Now that's just this sample. You can do whatever you want again, but it's nice to know that you can check for the type of error and then decide what to do based on that error. So we can go ahead and run this just so you can see it. We can see a reference type and what its default message is. We can see a range error and what its message is. We can see result.toUpperCase is not a function. We can see that the URI is malformed. And we can see when we're doing the eval that an invalid or unexpected token occurred. And you'll get all sorts of different error messages with that syntax error. But these are an example of the built-in JavaScript error objects. In this module, we saw that we should always add a try-catch around dangerous code. So anything that could cause an error, let's wrap it in that try-catch. You don't always need a finally block, but if you do need it, it's there. And remember that it runs every single time based on we go through normally or if we go through the catch block. So that finally block will run. We can also throw custom errors to communicate any specific information. This is very handy to give you additional information that you may not get just from the normal JavaScript error object. Remember to always include a name and a message property. Also, you could change how you handle errors based on the type of error. So you saw how I was passing in that error object to a switch statement, and then inside of each case I could do a lot of different things based on the type of error. Coming up in the next module, how to determine data types. We'll talk about the type of operator and the instance of operator. I hope you'll join me for the next module.